my whole goal having you come in was to talk about, raising up and teaching and coaching and training the next generation. And so this applies whether somebody is raising kids, got grandkids in their life, or yeah, maybe they don't have their kiddos of their own, but there are, maybe young employees they can speak, young coworkers, right? Or nieces, nephews, neighbors' kids, whatever.
I'm not real good at putting up with the games. But if you're here to learn, by golly, I'll take time off and we'll spend some time learning and we'll dig in. And while we're learning about how to run a soundboard, or while we're learning about how to program a lighting system, or while we're wrenching on a truck, it's amazing what comes up in topics of conversation.
Welcome to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. I am your host, Chad Hufford, and this is the podcast where we celebrate the unsung heroes of the working world. Each week, we dive into the incredible stories of honest, hardworking folks who have found financial success through grit, determination, and good old-fashioned elbow grease. So if you're ready to be inspired and learn how to turn your hard work into your own success story, you're in the right place. This is the Blue Collar Millionaire Show.
Welcome back to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. I'm your host for today, Logan Hufford, and I've got a special guest, Dave Horning, with me today here in office. I'd say in studio, but really it's our office. Dave is someone who I've known for a decade now. Go to church together at Creekside out in Wasilla. But I wanted to have you on because there's a lot. I mean, I've gotten to know you, Dave, and some of the things that you hold dear, especially what we're going to talk today about raising up the next generation with life skills, trade skills, spiritual skills. And yet it's like, we go to church together. It's a big church. There's a lot I don't know about you. And so this is maybe a good excuse to really get to know you and kind of what makes you tick, maybe some of your background. And though I know some of the things that you're passionate about, I'd like to dig in a little bit on why are you so passionate? What's your past looked like? But yeah, thank you for, you came into, I had to come in. I work here today, but you decided to come in to do this interview and I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming in.
And I forgot how many traffic lights there are and how much traffic there are in this city. Yes. Well, it's a privilege to be here and look forward to getting to know you a little bit better also.
Yeah. And so as we were discussing, off camera, when I'm asking you questions about yourself, these are not like me pretending to not know about you. Most of these things are like, no, I actually don't know some of this background info. Yeah. So fill our audience in just a little bit, maybe not even 30,000 foot view, but more of like the view from the International Space Station.
Okay.
Who is Dave Horning? What's your background? I actually don't even know. Did you grow up in Alaska?
Yeah.
Spend a couple minutes just talking about that.
Okay. Yeah. I'm a third generation Alaskan. My grandparents came up in the 40s, one to fly DC-3s for Alaska Airlines and another one to work with the military. So been up here quite a while. And who am I? I guess I would say first off, I'm a Christ follower. Second off, I'm a husband who's been married for 30 years. This is our 30th year of marriage.
Congrats.
And like any marriage, there's been ups and downs, and I've learned a lot, and we've learned a lot about each other. I'm a dad of 4 kids. Ages right now, 25, 23, 21, and 19, which means that we are just entering this empty nest phase of life, which is pretty weird and pretty fun and amazing all at the same time as the kids have transitioned through the different stages that kids do into the friend stage now. And we're not coaching anymore. They're on their own. And then I'm also a missionary. I work with a native ministry here in Alaska that does work all over the different villages. And I work with a lot of their media, audio, video, social media, and do also a lot of the fun paperwork with, IRS and state of Alaska compliance and copyright compliance for the music we use and different things like that.
Okay. And of course, a bit of how you and I have gotten acquainted at church is not really from, our families don't sit next to each other or, necessarily interact so much other than visually I see you, but you help me with some of the podcasting that I do, on the side, some of the ministry stuff. And of course that you were the wizard at Creekside that helped me out with figuring out how to how to figure out, my computer and my camera and stuff like that. So that's been cool. Do you the AV side, which me as I'm kind of a like technological Neanderthal. So anybody that's not me is like a tech wizard.
Okay.
But I mean, is that something that do you enjoy electronics? Do you enjoy more of kind of like the analog world, or is it all the same to you?
It's been really weird to watch it morph. I was the weird kid who was always out digging in dumpsters looking for old stereos and
Okay.
speakers and stuff like that, and installing car stereos when I was 13, installed my first church sound system when I was 16. So been playing around in this world for a long time, but yeah, it has been a massive shift from analog technology to, integrated circuits and how they've changed everything. So yeah, it's been wild, a lot of learning. And I think that's the key to life. I mean, if you don't focus on learning, you're going to fall behind in any field right now. But
Right.
I think in audio and video specifically, you've got to keep learning because there's something new every 6 months. And AI right now is just changing everything.
Right.
So it's a interesting time to be alive for sure.
So I'm curious of how you're going to answer this regarding your kids, but first I want to ask about you. Do you struggle currently, or have you struggled with the idea of, if I'm going to learn this new skill? And again, I mean, this could be a trade skill, or it could be something just just a general life skill. But if I'm going to learn this, I'm going to fail. I'm going to screw it up. I'm not going to know what to do. And speaking personally for myself, I get crippled by that oftentimes, and so I don't want to try the new thing because I'm scared I'm going to screw it up, and so then I don't even try it. Is that something that you do struggle with? Have you struggled with that, or?
I struggled with that for years.
Okay.
Till I was about 18 or 19 years old. My dad is not mechanically inclined. He'd
Okay.
be the first to admit that at all. And so I grew up not knowing how to do hardly anything and afraid to tackle most things. And then I met a guy in college, Christian friend of mine. We hung out, did a lot of stuff together, and he was very mechanically inclined. And I got to know him and his dad, and boy, they changed my life, watching their relationship, how they tackled projects. And one of the things he told me was, Dave, look at how many of these people out there who aren't very bright, who are making money, doing a lot of things. He says, you can do this. He says, just, go buy it. Back then, we didn't have the internet. You'll go buy the Chilton's manual or go buy the Haynes manual. And worst case scenario, you mess it up and you got to pay a mechanic to come behind you and fix it. But that's the worst case,
Right.
So you were already there. So dive in and go for it. And now with the internet, it's one of those deals of, I fail a lot, but hey, there's those occasional successes that make it worthwhile. But I had to get past that because it was very limiting in a lot of areas in life. I was go down this road, I guess. But in college, I was homeschooled, and when I got to college, I was the guy who was too afraid to ask a girl out because I might fail. She might say no, and it's so interesting to look back now that I've matured a little bit in conquering fear. I wonder what my life would look like now had I not lived so much of it in fear.
Yeah. I don't think I knew that you were homeschooled.
Okay.
I was homeschooled.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, two of the two primary hosts of this podcast, myself and my brother, both were homeschooled. So
we're all socially awkward.
That's right. I don't know that I can use past tense. I still am a lot of times.
You go.
And then regarding your kiddos, so 25, 23, 21, and 19.
Correct.
So, it's the exact same as my older siblings. Then I came along 3 years after my sister. Did you see that with them when they were, as you were instilling different skills and helping them learn things, did you see kind of one kid that, really, really got crippled by that, or one kid that never really had that gene of they would just try all the things, or was it kind of, were they all fairly similar?
I think they were all fairly similar, and we did dive into projects together. And so it was a situation of, we experienced failure. We've rebuilt, I don't know how many snow machines and four-wheelers out in the garage, and, tons of different projects and stuff. So they got to experience failure and realize that, okay, worst case scenario, we bust a bolt. Now we go find an easy out, that type of deal. But I think we're a very close family, and because we've homeschooled all of our kids also, and so they grew up together. They had a very close knit support group, and so I think that helped also eliminate some of that fear that we sometimes see in youth and young adults.
Right. And it's easy for me as a younger dad so our kids they're actually even a little bit tighter. They're 13, 12, 11, and 9, but similar range. And my wife, Carrie, the temptation is for me to say, well, she doesn't struggle like I do. I'm sure she does, but she's skilled at pushing through and just trying the thing. And I'm thankful because, by God's grace and a lot of awesome love from Carrie, our boys really seem to have that gene as well, where they're just going to try it, and they're going to break the thing. They're going to break the Lego creation, or they're going to break this electronic that they've been messing around with, and then they're going to try a new way, to tweak it or rebuild it or whatever. And I love that. And I'm constantly just trying to okay, don't don't scare them. It's like I'm watching a bird. It's like, don't scare it. I don't want them to get that fear that I know I struggle with. But it's easy for me to look at somebody and go, oh, well, they've probably always been that way. They're just not afraid to try things, and it's probably just came easy for them.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you sharing your own example, that it wasn't something that you were just born with, right?
No. And I think mentors are so key, having somebody who's got a little bit more experience. There's some, quotes on leadership. I'm a leadership podcast junkie, and one of the things that always pops up is, never be the smartest person in the room type of thing. And you can learn so much if you're not the smartest person in the room. Yeah. And I think that is really key in my life. I'm part of a Tuesday morning Bible study group with a group of guys, and a lot of them are a lot smarter than I am, and a totally different financial bracket than I am. But it's something powerful about being around people who are a little bit more mature than you, a little bit more experienced than you, and being willing and able to learn from them that can help with that fear thing also.
What about that? So finding a mentor, being mentored, is that something that came about? I mean, did you have that when you were a little kid, a teenager, a young adult? When did that start happening?
In college. College for me, I'll take a step back and say one of the passions that I'm in an interesting phase of life. My dad's struggling with a lot of health issues. Don't know how much longer he's got. Mentioned the empty nest phase. And I'm in this phase of life where I'm realizing I've got more life behind me than I do in front of me. And so I've really started looking at a lot of different things very differently, as what legacy am I going to leave behind? And as I think of that, I looked back at my own life and realized when my life changed was when I met this friend that I talked about earlier. I'm passionate about a young adult ministry, because that's when a lot of decisions are being made in life that will impact the rest of your life. When you're 18, 19, 20, 21, you're choosing probably your spouse, your career, where you're going to live, what you're going to do with Christ.
Right.
All these different things are in that key 10-year window. And for me, at the beginning of that 10-year window, I was very involved here at UAA. With the InterVarsity Christian Fellowship Group, and was on some of the leadership of that. But that got me around a lot of other Christians, and specifically a group of Christian guys that we just hung out together. And because we were all Christians and we were all...
That was when you were in college?
Yeah, 19, 20 years old. Okay. Yeah. And so one of those relationships has been a relationship that is, matter of fact, I was just talking to him, 2 days ago about some challenges, and it was really a powerful time of having mentors. In a sense, we grew up together, but I got to know his dad also, and his dad's a strong Christian, and I looked at their relationship and said, I want that for my kids. And so, him being a Christian and his dad. So I ended up going on hunting trips with he and his dad. Yeah. And his dad had to come in for some medical stuff the other day, and I dropped everything I was doing to go be with his dad at the hospital because I'm just that tight. So mentors, I think, is huge. And as I look at the legacy I can leave, I'm realizing that my time as a mentor / coach with my kids has come to an end. I'm now in the friendship phase, which is awesome. But now I need to be finding other young adults that I can step in and be around. And if they choose to ask questions, be there to say, well, let me let you in on some stuff I had to learn the hard way, and maybe you won't have to.
Right.
So,
it's a powerful thing what you just said about your kids. you're entering this friendship stage, but man, that's not where it starts. It shouldn't
No.
start there, right?
There's a guy named Eric Dingler, and it's interesting because we raised our kids, and we then heard his podcast, I think, or something, of where he mentioned the 5 stages of parenting, and we were like, dude, that's what we did, but we had no clue this is what we were doing. And
Okay.
he talks about the importance of these 5 stages. And he says, birth to 1 year, it's important for parents to connect with their kid. That kid needs to feel safe and loved. And if you look at the science behind it, there's actually hormones that are released in a baby's body when they connect with their mom and their dad for
Right.
the first time. And so that's an important time. But you come from 1 year to 5 years, you need to transition now to just connecting. And now you got to work on discipline. And you need to make sure those kids understand that there's consequences to actions, and that there's always going to be somebody in your life that is over you, authoritarian. It may be law enforcement, it may be your boss. Obviously, it's God, it's parents, but you've got to get discipline in that stage, if at all possible, between 1 and 5 years. Then at years 6 to 12, you transition a little bit and you move more into the training phase, where, okay, the discipline is there. Now let's focus on training them. Then around 13 to 18, that training needs to change and become more coaching.
Okay.
Let them do things, let them make mistakes, be there to say, okay, now, yeah, you over torqued that bolt because you didn't use the torque wrench. And that torque spec is there for a reason. So now let's grab the easy out, we'll pull it out, we'll retorque it. Not a big deal.
Right.
And then you step back and you let them do the work. But 18 years on up, your days of giving advice are done unless it's asked for.
Right.
But what I see so many parents try and do, and boy, this is a whole nother topic of challenge that we're in our society right now with broken homes and moms trying to raise boys and just that whole thing. That's a whole nother topic. But so many parents try and be friends at 13. And it's like, that doesn't work. You need to be in a teaching phase when they're that young, because it's not there. And if you haven't disciplined your kid and all of a sudden you try and discipline your teenager for the first time at 15 because they broke curfew, that's not going to go over well. So these stages were really an important thing for us to look at. And we just stumbled on them. But I thought that's just genius to break it down that way.
Well, and you said, what was the stage right before coaching?
Training 6 to 12. Yeah.
And even that, like, how would you define the difference between training and coaching?
Training is me doing it, them watching, and me talking through what I'm doing, and stressing to some point safety, although my pet peeve is the safety first mantra. Our family's is safety third. And if we want to go into that, we can, but that's a whole another topic. But doing it while they watch and explaining why you're doing, and then stepping back would be the next phase. It's okay. Now I showed you how to do it. There's little ways that we can make it easier here. Now it's your turn. You do it.
Right.
So,
And it makes me think of, there's a huge place for absorbing an education, but that is not the same thing as being coached.
right.
And yeah, there's a place for both.
Yeah.
But it really matters, what is my expectation if I'm entering, if I am the mentee or I'm the student or whatever, right now, is this a moment where I need, it probably matters even more if I'm the one who is trying to mentor, right?
Yeah.
Do I need to teach or do I need to coach?
Right.
And, it's something obviously in recovery, in addiction recovery, there's both, there's times where I am teaching my guys, there's times where I was taught, but then there's times where I'm asking questions and I'm trying to help them see things from a different angle. I'm trying to hold up the mirror a bit. And then that's the coaching, and we do the same thing here. Cause at the end of the day, it's life principles, right? Whether it's addiction recovery, whether it's, financial management, whether it's parenting, marriage, a lot of those principles are just threads throughout.
Well, and that's something that I've really tried to stress with my kids is you've got to be teachable, because you can have the world's best teacher standing right next to you, but if you're not listening to that content and focusing on how to apply it, it does no good. I've taught a couple financial peace classes, Dave Ramsey financial peace classes. And I think back to some of those classes in the middle of one of the classes I was teaching, where we're talking about not going into debt, a couple that was severely into debt. They were having some marriage problems. And what happened in the middle of that class? Guy goes out and buys a brand new $75,000 pickup truck on debt. or on credit. And
Right.
I'm like, oh. So you've got to be teachable, and you've got to really be willing to learn too, because again, you can have that best teacher right next door, but
Yeah.
if you're not willing to listen, it does no good.
So where my mind goes when you talk about being teachable, especially as a kid, although I didn't start becoming teachable when I turned 18, that's for darn sure. Rick, if you're listening, you know that. I mean, I was just talking to some loved ones about this. When I definitely wasn't teachable as a teenager. I mean, that's for darn sure. I had no interest in being taught or mentored or coached or anything.
Right.
When I was a young adult, in my head, kind of sort of was open to it. And looking back on it, I think I probably felt like, well, it'll look good if a pastor is having breakfast with me, or if I'm getting counsel from something. Like, realistically, I wasn't going to be vulnerable. I wasn't going to be mentored. I wanted them to be on retainer. If I needed help, I could ask them for advice, but otherwise I wasn't interested in what they had to say.
The old take the advice you want to take and leave the rest.
Which is,
yeah.
And I have gone to, I mean, there's two names in particular. I've gone to those guys, and I mean, when I went through my recovery program, those were definitely two of my amends that I was making. And I've tried to just express so much gratitude, because I did see back then, but I definitely see now how much love, how much energy they poured into me. And they did plant some seeds.
Yeah.
But all that to say, I don't know what somebody could have said to me that would have made me behave differently.
Right.
I really do believe, I saw this quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but it's something to the effect of like, you can't parent your kids away from their testimony, which is, and it's not to excuse stuff, right? But it is a powerful reminder, I think. And when I look at myself and my life, I had to burn myself on the stove a few times.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful for the lessons that I've learned, but I learned a lot through experience. I don't know that I would have learned, there weren't like magic words that could have made me be different.
Yeah.
But, so when you think about with your kiddos, again, have they all kind of had similar viewpoints regarding, a mentor, people speaking into their life? Obviously, not to say that any of them are like past a certain threshold necessarily.
Right.
I mean, they're all legal adults, but they're still figuring things out. Did you see any examples of like one kid, kind of rebuffing and really not desiring to have somebody speak into their life? Or maybe you don't want to put them on blast, but what did you see in regards to stuff like that?
Well, it's interesting. Let me step back real quick and say one of the things we did that was a little maybe unusual that a lot of parents don't do is we were very strategic in the gifts we gave our kids for birthdays and Christmas. So one of the things we did was tools and musical instruments and anything that would get them outside. So yes.
I just want to make sure I'm clear. So physical gifts that were given by you and Laura to your kiddos for their presence. You exclusively would give instruments, tools, and things that would get them outside, or just mostly?
Mostly, yeah.
Okay.
We tried to really focus on things that would help them develop skills rather than, the little plastic box that lights up and beeps. We were like, well, that's $20, but I can give him a hammer, a screwdriver, and a set of Allen wrenches for $20, and those will last the rest of his life. But we focused on instruments, and then this gets into mentoring, mainly because I wanted them to have two things. Number one, a way to express themselves emotionally. You get frustrated. Don't scream and yell at somebody. Go to the instrument and play, and use that instrument as a way to communicate emotion. I also wanted the instruments because that is discipline. You practice that thing 30 minutes, 45 minutes every day, and you get discipline. What I didn't expect to come out of that was have all four of my kids get to a point in their abilities where they were playing on the church worship team.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, that's cool. But stepping back and looking, what happened as a result of them playing on the church worship team is they were around other mature Christian men and Christian women who were speaking into their lives, saying the same stuff we were saying, but it wasn't mom and dad. All of a sudden it carries more weight.
Yep.
So that aspect of them being on worship teams for years, starting off in youth group where they were playing and then working all the way up through being some pretty amazing men and women they got to work with over the years of being on the praise teams. I think that really helped them. As to your, did some take it more than others? I do have, every kid's different. You have your first kid.
Name names.
Yeah, no names. But every kid is different. Your first one comes and you're like, okay, this is hard, but okay, been there. And your second one, you're like, okay, I'm ready. And then you realize, whoa, number 2 is radically different than number 3. And I don't know if you guys, but when you hit number 4, you're like, I think we got this figured out. We've had 3 other ones. And number 4, you're like, what in the world?
Wild card.
So yeah, we do have, one that is a little bit more of a free will, does stuff, but by golly, it's been some fun memories that have been made there too. But yeah, definitely everybody's a little different.
Do you have all boys?
3 boys, 1 girl.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And another thing too, and I'm rambling here, sorry, shut me down if you want. But another thing that I think of with regard to raising children is my brain thinks in pictures. And I think raising children is a lot like building a foundation. That foundation, when you go to build a house, it's always amazing to me how long that takes to build, because you got to excavate all the bad dirt, bring in new dirt, to build your forms, pour your concrete, make sure it's flat, make sure it's true. But if you get a good foundation, something pretty cool can be built on that. If you don't have a good foundation, that house or structure will struggle for its entire lifespan. However, you can build your kids the best foundation that you can possibly build them. And they can choose to build a little rundown shack on it with a leaky tin roof, or they can drag an old beat up mobile home onto it, or they can build something pretty amazing. I think back to, I got a friend who's going through some tough stuff with their kids right now. And I told him the other day, I said, Adam and Eve had the best parents and the best environment. And what happened? They made choices. And so that's, I think, an important thing to realize as a parent is exactly what you were talking about earlier, that pesky thing called free will. We can go off the res, so to speak, if we want to. So,
and I will say, I mean, maybe this is just because I have my own bias, because all of us, I know the life that I have lived, right? I know the bias that I carry with my own perspective. But I mean, I share often, if I'm talking recovery, I was given a really, really solid foundation, and it's not the same as building your own foundation, right? It's not the same as building your own infrastructure is usually the word that I use. But I don't discount the fact that because I was given that foundation, and, so if anybody's listening and maybe they do have a thing where, their kiddos they've got a couple shacks, on the foundations. For me, at least, because I was given an incredible foundation that I went out and I squandered for a long while, but I also knew deep down, even if it was really, really deep down sometimes, those seeds had been planted. I knew what a good foundation I did have. I knew, the love that my family had for me and all these things. And I know we're getting deep and away from finances here, but all of us either have kids or we have people close to us who are, who we can speak into their lives, or we have people speaking into our lives, hopefully both, right? And these things matter. And my whole goal having you come in was to talk about, raising up and teaching and coaching and training the next generation. And so this applies whether somebody is raising kids, got grandkids in their life, or maybe they don't have their kiddos of their own, but there are, maybe young employees they can speak, young coworkers, right? Or nieces, nephews, neighbors' kids, whatever. So getting back to kiddos and specifically, skills. I guess let me do this, because I would imagine you're the type of person, I don't think you're going to just go on a big rant to brag. So I'm going to force you to share a couple things. Give me some examples. You shared some off air, but just some of the projects, current projects, past projects, 15 years ago. What are some of the projects that you worked on with your kiddos? Because not to discount if the project is, I'm not toolsy enough to even probably think of a good example, but we're hammering a nail into a board and just to learn how to hammer. not discounting that, but like you're doing some pretty cool projects. So give a few examples of some of those things that you've worked on with your kiddos.
Oh, one of the things that was big for our family was snow machining. Down south, they call them snowmobiles.
Right.
Why we insist on calling them snow machines up here, I don't know. But I always grew up on snow machines, loved them, and wanted my kids to have the same. But we were never in a financial situation where we were able to just go buy a brand new one. And so it turned into a deal of, okay, well, here's an old rundown one we can buy, and we can, fix it up. And the cool thing about snow machines is they're pretty simple. If you're going to, start learning on something, snow machines are pretty basic, at least the older ones. And so we ended up with a snow machine and then go out there and work on it with the boys when they were young. My deal was you ride, you wrench.
Okay.
Dad's not going to fix this thing for you. This is, we're going to have fun, but we're also going to work together on maintaining it and tweaking it and improving it. And so had one and had fun with it. And then, somebody's moving out of state. Hey, we got an old beat up snow machine. Do you want it? And so I decided early on I was only going to use Polaris snow machines because there was a lot of interchangeability of the parts between the years. And so long story short, over time, people moving out of state, friends here when we were wrenching on stuff, somebody would wreck a machine. They'd call me up. Hey, got a snow machine, the front skis tore off, but the engine's good. Then, a year later, I'd get a call. Hey, I got a snow machine. The engine's bad, but the rest of it's in good shape. Oh, well, that's easy. We'll pull the engine out and drop it in this one and ride. And so at one point we had 13 different snow machines on our property. My wife was not thrilled. But we built a couple, what we called Franken sleds, where it was just one machine had, I think, 11 different machines parts on it,
right?
Because it took that many to, get it all salvaged, but taught the kids how to rivet and how to, do all the different things. And it kind of showed them that a lot of this stuff isn't as hard as it seems if you just kind of dive in. But we did that. Did a lot of other fun little things. Like we decided, I talked about the safety third thing. I get very frustrated at safety first mentality parenting because I look at that idea of if there's any chance of somebody getting hurt, we can't do it. And I go, we'd have never gone to the moon. We'd have never defeated Germany in World War II. We'd have never settled the West,
Right.
So we have a saying in our house.
We wouldn't be driving in cars.
Seriously.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And we have a lot of sayings in our house, but one of them is everything worth doing has some degree of risk associated with it. And so we were always the house that, we had a trampoline and we didn't have a net, and it was like, okay, we got a little bit of slope to our land. Well, we've got room for 100-foot zip line. And so we put up 100-foot zip line. And, I wanted my kids to learn how to shoot and do Alaskan type things. So we have an actual shooting range in our land. They've only got an acre, but I got a good backstop. And so that type of stuff. So lots of different things like that to build family ties and family bonds and also give them some confidence in tackling different projects and different things.
Well, one thing I can say from experience is having 4 boys, even if you had a net, eventually you don't have a net.
See, there is that.
The net goes away pretty quickly.
Well, and you might need to get your wife this shirt, but I almost got it for my wife. And it's a mother of boys, less drama than girls, but harder to keep alive. And I was like, yep, definitely true.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. For 4 boys, it's something. So let's, I guess I'll be a good, Veritas employee here. Let's talk money for a second.
Okay.
So, because I see, I'll be just very transparent. I didn't have you come on specifically to talk about training up your kids with finances. It was skills in general, especially trade skills.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things I want to circle back to regarding education, college, things like that. But regarding money, because I know that is something that you're very passionate about as well, and I don't want to just take it for granted. So talk to me a little bit about what's that looked like as far as teaching them, whether it's personal finance. Let me let you go. What's that looked like?
We decided early on we were never going to give our kids an allowance. Kind of like Dave Ramsey says, it's too much like welfare. We're not going there. So we created chore boards, and every kid had certain things they were going to do. Some things you do just because you're part of the family, but there's other things that you have to do if you want to get money. So
above and beyond.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So you don't get anything as a base pay, but we heat with wood. And so, okay, if you want to, you want a little bit of money, well, carry in the wood for 7 days, and at the end of the week, you'll get your payday. So we started that as, no expectation of money's coming your way without work. Money takes work. And the other thing that, there was a defining moment. My kids came home from youth group one time, and there was I can't remember whether it was a summer or a winter retreat, but there was a retreat coming up that had a cost to it. It was over $100.
Yeah.
And, somebody at the church had mentioned that there were scholarships available. And my kids came home and started talking about it. And I said, well, okay, we got to realize that's got a cost to it. Oh, but there's a scholarship. And I said, no, not for you. There's not. I said, money doesn't come free. I said, if you can work, you're going to work. And so we came up with the idea that we would help our kids work to get the money to fund special events like retreats and stuff. So we're the weird family out in the church parking lot selling pizzas. What we did is we taught the kids that, okay, let's create a small business here. And so we went through the whole process of what it takes to make a pizza, how much it costs to make it, what you can sell it for a profit. And then we taught them, come up with lists of customers. You make the phone calls, you cold call. You're going to get no's. You're going to get yeses. This is how you track how many you've sold. Now you do all the math to figure out how much.
You weren't sitting just, and I'm not dissing the people, but it's one thing to sit at Three Bears, like I think it's cool, your people skills and you're talking to strangers, but you were actually cold calling.
Yeah, to church. And so it wasn't cold, but I mean, it was church friends.
Yeah.
People they'd served on worship team with, other family.
That's still a cold call though.
It's a cold call.
Dang.
And it was really good. And it was really hard for a couple of them at first, but like anything, the more you do it, it becomes easier. So year 2, 3, 4, it wasn't nearly as big of a deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were times we were making 160, 180 pizzas. And then that was just I think a really good experience for them to learn that this whole sit on your rear end watching TV from the comfy recliner, isn't where you're going to get ahead financially.
Was that specifically the selling pizzas, was that and I guess I'm discounting it, making and selling pizzas? At first I thought maybe you meant, you buy a, Little Caesars and then you sell individual slices or anything, but you were making the pizzas.
Yeah.
Was that a specific season of life, or was that just like their one of their go-tos for years if they wanted?
For years.
Okay.
Yeah, we did it for probably 7 years, maybe 8 years.
Wow.
And yeah, my kids can throw a pie. I've got a pretty cool picture of, three pies in the air at the same time as they're throwing them, stretching them all out. So if they ever, they're all doing different occupations right now, but if their occupations no longer work for them, they can go get a job at Papa John's or Angelo's or whatever and throw pies with the best of them.
Golly, that's cool.
They can do it better than I can. I'm like, okay, I'll be the sauce guy. You guys are so much faster at throwing them and getting them around than I'll ever be.
Yeah.
So, but that was I think a big thing for them to realize that. And it's been interesting now because my older two are in jobs right now that have, the pensions and the 401ks, and they're maxing out their 401ks at 24, 25. Yeah. And I'm like, you guys are going to be so glad you did that.
Right.
25, 30 years down the road. That's a mistake I made, is I did not put enough in my IRAs back when I was working for companies that had a match. I went up to the match, but I didn't go as high as I could have.
Right.
And another mistake we made financially, Laura and I ourselves, I think it wasn't a big mistake. We focused so much on paying off the house early that, okay, now we're in a situation where the house is great, but I don't have that compound interest time on the money that I should have been putting my 15% into savings. And so I kind of flipped it there. I guess you could say I'm house poor, is I think how a lot of people would define it. So yeah, it's very interesting when you start talking finances, because, laying that foundation for kids, I think, is so important to where it's not an expectation that money is just going to show up and arrive.
And that's so cool. Cause again, I mean, it's one thing to teach, and if I do this really well, I'm doing better than most. If I teach my kids all the ins and outs of how finances work, both on a, broad economic level, personal finance, everything in between. But what you were doing was truly having them do the skills, not just teaching them book knowledge. That's pretty cool. And again, I did not know these stories before I asked. So, anything else that comes to mind in terms of a financial lesson with the kiddos, or a, financial like specifically financial principles, lessons, things that you really wanted to focus or were able to focus on doing with the kids?
Yeah, the main thing I would say, actions and consequences. You got to let them not attend some things that they may want to attend, and you could bail them out with an extra $15, but what lesson are you teaching them when you bail them out? So I think that was one of the hardest things is, okay, your friend's got a birthday party coming up, but you don't have enough money to buy a gift. What are you going to do? Well, can I borrow? No, we don't use the word borrow in this house. And so you need to either go stack some wood or whatever, because you need to have a gift when you go to that party.
Right.
So different things like that, being willing to make the tough calls that are hard as a parent. It's so easy to bail out our kids.
Right.
But what lesson are we teaching them? That teaches them that, there's always somebody there to bail me out.
Right.
If it's not dad, it'll be the government.
Right.
And so I would say that was one that was really hard, but I think important.
And so you made some really, really hard calls. And as a dad, I can definitely feel for you on an empathetic level there. But you also gave your kids tremendous opportunities that they could capture.
Yes.
If they were willing to, they could capture.
Right.
It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be maybe on the terms that they wanted, but it was there depending on how bad they wanted it.
And that came all the way back from my parents, I've got to say, because my parents raised me that way also. They were Larry Burkett people before, before Dave Ramsey was around. What's he say? He said, I got my stuff from Larry Burkett, God and Grandma, I think is what Dave Ramsey says. But so we grew up with Larry Burkett, and my parents were always like, yeah, if you want money, you can rent the lawnmower. Not you can use the lawnmower, go knock on door. You can rent it. You can rent the John Deere snowblower. And so that's kind of how I was raised. And I learned so much from that. I was like, I think that's what I wanted my kids to learn too, was there's opportunity out there, and you just need to go get it.
I want to ask you about education outside of K through 12.
Mm-hmm.
And I do know some of your opinions, talk, whether it's social media, different things that I've seen you share your opinion. So it's a bit of a leading question, but again, I truly do want to hear what you have to say. I guess just talk about how you have, maybe not just your opinion, talk about how you have instilled in your kids the opportunities that are out there to be educated, to be trained, to learn skills beyond high school, whether that's college, trade schools, just, going to work at whatever job. How did those conversations come up? What's that look like?
From early on, we let the kids know a couple things. Number one, we were not going to be in a position financially, just due to being faith-based missionaries, that we were going to be able to pay for their college. So we let them know early on that we thought college was very important, and that we thought it was something they should really try to do, and that we thought they were all intellectually capable of doing it.
Right.
But that it was going to be a financial cost we would not be able to afford. And so we were going to provide them with the ability to test well and be educated at a level. Well, they'll probably be able to apply and receive some scholarships for education. So that would be one thing that I would say we stressed early on, is we did feel college was important.
Yeah.
I've got one son who is just my youngest, who is just certified as an aircraft mechanic. So he's a FAA certified aircraft mechanic at 19, which is pretty crazy. But even him, I told him, I says, okay, I'm going to recommend that you also get a college degree, because what I've seen in a lot of the trades is there hits a point, usually 50, 55 years old, where the back and the knees in a lot of the trades start to go out. And I've seen a lot of older people in a whole lot of pain because they didn't plan for the body failing before the financial need was there. And so we really stressed that if at all possible, pick a degree. So he's got the aircraft mechanic degree, but he is in the middle now of finishing up a degree in applied business management. So he'll be the guy who hopefully at the shop, he loves working on airplanes, does it for years. And if his body starts to fail and they're like, okay, hey, this guy's got some management training and some leadership training and a proven track record, he's a natural guy to promote and put over the mechanics. So I think that college is important. However, I think being strategic with your college debt is extremely important. And not getting into debt. There's so many ways to not get into debt. I get so frustrated when I hear kids say, "Oh, you can't go to college without going into debt."
Right.
Bull.
Right.
Yes, you can. You just have to make it a priority, and maybe you don't go out of state to that fancy college
Right.
with the waterfalls and the huge green lawns
Right.
and the rock, all this. No, my kids all chose to stay in state. They all graduated debt free. And a lot of them worked while they were, if they were off college,
You can work while you go to school?
What a novel concept, huh? Isn't that crazy? So the no debt thing was huge. I was like, if you're going to go to college and it involves going to debt, don't go to college. And also if you're going to go to college, pick a degree that actually has some value.
Right.
I'm not going to name some of the degrees
Right.
that I think you should avoid, but it may be obvious that certain degrees have more value than others. I've got 2 kids who are engineers and they're both doing very well. And I've got another son who's in accounting and he's getting ready to graduate from that. Ironically, he's the one who's my hardcore extrovert.
Okay.
And he went into accounting. He's getting ready to graduate with that degree, but already realizes that he just needs people. So he's going to finish that degree and then he's going immediately into starting a medical degree into imaging.
Wow.
And so, but yeah, so there's great degrees out there, but I think I would say, tech school is great, but have a plan. If you're going into tech school, have your long-term goal to be either opening your own business down the road or transitioning somehow. Make yourself valuable as a leader. You don't have to get a degree in management, but at least take a few management classes.
Right.
Take a few classes on the policies and procedures that govern your industry. Hazmat is a big deal right now.
Right.
Environmental is a big deal. So find out how those affect your industry and maybe take a 3-credit course on just that. Then you got something killer to add to your resume down the road when we get older.
Right.
So,
and so
that answers like what you were looking for.
No, I mean, I've heard you say some things, but I just wanted to hear you, share about that. And even just speaking for myself, I can tend to be too black and white sometimes. And so I can sometimes go, man, because I see how like the world and just and I don't mean the world in a spiritual sense, but just like people, there's this automatic, well, you gotta go to college after high school because that's what people do.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what degree, just get a degree, just figure it out.
Danger.
Get the debt. Like I despise that. I do think that there's so much foolishness in that, but I can be black and white. I can be overly black and white where I go, I'm going to push back on that. And just, man, most people just probably shouldn't do that. Just go to trade school, go start working at FedEx, start working at Costco, start from the ground up and just go build a career. And I think there is a lot of value in that, but I appreciate your perspective because if I understand you correctly, like hey, college can be a tremendous tool.
Yeah.
But it should be a tool, right? Not the thing that is enslaving you.
Exactly.
And it's just the automatic on-ramp that if you don't do, that means you're obviously dumb or crazy. But make it work for you, right? And have a plan.
Yeah. And I use the analogy, not specifically with college, but I think it kind of fits. It can be a tool, kind of like a chainsaw can be a tool. It can be very effective, but it can also chop off both your legs if you're stupid.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of recruiting for one of the mission organizations I was involved with. And what I saw over and over and over again were 22, 24-year-old people who would come out of Bible school and they'd want to go to the mission field in Alaska to work with what we were doing. And one of the questions I learned had to be up near the top was, okay, where do you stand financially? Because so many of these kids would go to these great Christian Bible colleges.
Yeah.
And they'd get a degree that would be really a great degree, but they would come out, they'd get married with $30,000 on him and $30,000 on her. They got $60,000 in debt. And you can't go in the mission field with that much debt. It's just not feasible.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing. College is great. However, you got to approach it the right way. And also there's a lot of people out there who are extremely mechanically inclined and we need them. And so, man, go into the trades. But anytime I talk to a young adult going into the trades, I really try and stress, plan, like I was saying earlier, for your body to fail, because make sure you're not just the guy who can weld real good and lay a good bead, but that you also, have a good relationship with your boss. You show up on time, you have a good attitude, you're teachable, so that down the road, you can be the one who's now mentoring the younger people behind you, and they're doing the hard work. They're the ones crawling around under the semi, getting dripped on, and,
So speaking of mentoring, and I want to circle back to something that you mentioned probably 20 minutes ago, but your kids, your youngest is already 19 now, right?
Yeah.
And so you've transitioned from, you are no longer their primary teacher and mentor, although obviously you're available as their dad when they are going to come to you, right? But you talked about, what does that transition look like? Mentoring others. Is that something you're still trying to figure out? Or do you feel like you've kind of made a transition? Maybe past tense is not the right way to look at it, but does that make sense in terms of, whether it's kids, teenagers, whatever, at church, in other ministries, other fields in your life? What does that look like, transitioning?
I naturally love to teach, and it's one of those things that is a great natural transition into a mentoring type relationship. If you are working with people who want to learn, I have discovered I'm not the best with other people's teenagers on down. I connect better with 16, 17-year-old on up, because I am very much a tough love type of person.
Yeah.
I'm very much a actions and consequences, and I'm not real good at putting up with the games. But if you're here to learn, by golly, I'll take time off, and we'll spend some time learning, and we'll dig in. And while we're learning about how to run a soundboard, or while we're learning about how to program a lighting system, or while we're wrenching on a truck, it's amazing what comes up in topics of conversation, dating, future goals. So what do you think of church? What does that mean to you? Different. It's the whole thing of leveraging where your skills and abilities are, and hopefully turning them into mentoring relationships. I'm getting ready to start teaching. I teach a class at Alaska Bible College called Media and Ministry. And it's been a really neat way to build some relationships with some young adults who are really trying to go somewhere with their life and to benefit other people. And I've got some really neat relationships with some students that I've had in different classes. And it's been a neat way to go there. But that's one thing that, as I'm realizing, what legacy am I going to leave behind?
Right.
It's not being real good at pushing a fader or turning a knob on a soundboard. It's speaking into people's lives, hopefully in such a way that they'll be able to speak into people's lives, who will be able to speak into people's lives and continue on the original multi-level marketing. So,
yeah. So I thank you again so much for being generous with your time. Seriously.
It's great to be here.
I know we're running, a little bit long, but this is, I planned some of the episodes. Chad plans some of the episodes. This is one that I've been really, really excited about. I don't play favorites, but man, I've been excited to dive into this. And so I think it's okay that we're running a little bit long here, because this is awesome stuff. Before we go, I'm going to stay here at Veritas for a few more hours. But before you go, Dave,
I get to hit Costco.
That's right. Go Costco and then go back to the Valley. I didn't bring you here, to necessarily focus on your personal financial journey. I don't mean that in a bad way, right? But I wanted to focus on the mentorship, the teaching and the training of your kiddos and what that's looked like. I really wanted to focus on that. But what is something that maybe you've learned in with you and your wife Laura, maybe something unexpected, of how you guys have handled finances and learned things along the way? Speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, finances were, if you do the research, the number one cause of marriage challenges and divorce is finances and money problems. And I think one of the things that was really good for us is that my wife and I were very similar, and we had a lot of financial conversations before we got married.
Okay.
And that was very
important.
You guys? 24. Okay. Yeah, I think we were both 24 when we got married.
Okay.
So we were a little bit older, knew ourselves a little bit better. I'm the spender, and she's the the nerd, free spirit, whatever you want to say.
Right.
She's the nerd. I'm the free spirit.
Okay.
But yeah, that financially, that was really huge for us to have a lot of hard conversations and agreeing that we were going to make a lot of sacrifices with regard to vacations, houses, and cars, to have her be able to stay at home and be full time with the kids. And so we did. That's just been a part of our life. And we were just talking the other day how we don't regret any of those sacrifices at all. We do it all again in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
One thing we did do that I wish we maybe had done better, maybe about it, was we did invest so much time into the kids that our marriage took a hit.
Okay.
And, our life revolved around our kids. And so when the kids started, getting jobs and moving out and stuff like that, we looked at each other and realized we didn't really know each other like we thought we did, because we'd both changed in 25 years.
Yeah.
And at times we didn't even like each other very much, So that was a hard lesson, and something I would caution everybody is, while you're investing into your kids, make sure you're still investing into your marriage, because your kids are going to leave. If you did it right, they're going to leave. You don't ideally want that 26-year-old living in the basement.
Right.
But that was a lesson that I would say was a hard lesson for us to learn. And by the grace of God, we're doing great. It's been fun, but it was a rough patch for us to realize how much we'd both changed, and had our own hobbies and our own interests. And now now, by golly, she likes to snow machine and four-wheel.
Yeah.
We can get into that, so, but yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. Before I let you go, is there anything that you wanted to plug, or a story that we hadn't had a chance to get to yet? Some principle before we go.
We've really switched on, I told earlier we gave gifts of musical instruments, tools, and stuff like that. The thing we're really doing now is focusing on memories. What can we give that will be a memory? This year, our kids all got gifts. Again, they're on their own. 3 of my 4 are married. The 4th one, there's probably a marriage in the fairly near future. But the gifts we gave them this year were trips on the Alaska Railroad to Seward.
Okay.
And it's like, go build a memory. And that's something I wish that we had done earlier, is focused more on building memories, because those last a lifetime. And so I'm thinking of one trip that my 16-year-old, he's 25 now, but when he was 16, he just got his license. And we had an opportunity to drive a 3/4-ton diesel pickup truck up from Kansas City, Missouri. And so he and I spent 9 days driving a truck up, just he and I, and he's 16, brand new license, but he's driving 75, 80 miles an hour down the road, and where the speed limits are higher.
Right.
And we still talk about that trip. We stopped at every auto museum that was, something. We stopped at Wall Drug. We've got all these memories that are never going to go away. And so I would say that's something that I wish I'd done a little bit more of early on, is focus on giving memories. And building memories, because those do last a lifetime.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much again for coming in, and for giving the time to be here. And for anyone that's listening, if you're not familiar with Alaska, Dave and I both live in the valley, and so he's put in at least a couple hours by the end of the day just to come here, let alone the time on this podcast.
Totally worth it.
But more than the time, thank you for being willing to share. Sometimes we will do an episode, where it's a couple of us that work here and we're talking over a principle or a lesson or a book. But my favorite ones are always when we can have, somebody from the outside come in and share your story, and share. These are not just principles, whether they come from Proverbs or they come from a Dave Ramsey book or from somebody's newsletter. Like, these are real life things that really matter and make a gigantic difference. So thank you, Dave.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
Awesome. All right, guys, join us next time on the Blue Collar Millionaire Show, and look forward to diving into more lessons and how they apply to everyday life and finances. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. We hope this episode has been inspiring and beneficial to you. If you want help on your journey to financial freedom, reach out to us at veritasalaska.com. We'd love to sit down over a cup of coffee with you, either here in our office or virtually, and get to know you and your needs. And though this podcast is free of charge, we do ask that you please do us two quick favors. If you enjoyed the episode, give our pod a great rating on iTunes or whatever podcast platform you use, and also give us a follow on Instagram. We hope you have a wonderful day filled with gratitude and intentionality. God bless.